بسم الله والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين وبعد. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was known as a Rasul. A Rasul in Arabic means a messenger. The equivalent of this is, I have a friend in another country and I want to send a message to him. So I tell my brother, when you're visiting that country, go tell him X, Y, and Z. That is a messenger. But Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was no ordinary messenger as we think of it. Rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed him with fasaha and balagha. Allah blessed him with a very powerful tongue. He was able to articulate his message. And on top of that, Allah gave him jawami'ul kalim. Jawami'ul kalim means he sallallahu alayhi wasallam would say a few words, but those words were so profound that scholars would come later and write volumes on just a few words. There are many examples. You'll find one hadith. Sometimes I go to the library to buy a book, and you'll find an author, he takes one hadith, and the size of the book is like an encyclopedia. It's this big. One hadith, and this massive. There's a hadith of Jabir radiallahu anh, that he sold his camel to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam while they're coming back from a campaign. Famous, known as Hadith Jabir. One whole thick volume just on one hadith. At any rate, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he imparted this message, and sometimes when he would speak, the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they felt very motivated. They felt that something was different. And the hadith that we're going to cover today was one of those occasions. On this occasion, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spoke to the Sahaba, and a particular Sahabi who was present, Al-Irbad ibn Sariya radiyallahu ta'ala an, he describes this advice, this nasiha of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam by saying, وَعَظَنَا رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمْ مَوْعِظَةً وَجِلَتْ مِنْهَا الْقُلُوبُ وَذَرَفَتْ مِنْهَا الْعُيُونُ. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one random occasion, he spoke to us, and his words were so powerful, وَجِلَتْ مِنْهَا الْقُلُوبُ, it felt as though our hearts were trembling. وَذَرَفَتْ مِنْهَا الْعُيُونُ, our eyes were watery, we were tearing and crying. And when we heard this advice, we got scared. We thought only a person would give this advice when something is wrong. Imagine you have a conversation with your spouse or your parents, right? You get a call from your mom 2 o'clock at night, and she begins to say to you, you know what, forgive me. You start getting scared. 2 o'clock at night, I'm getting a call from my mom. Did something happen? So they're alarmed. So the Sahaba, they heard he was saying the words with so much emotion that they got alarmed. And they said, Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, كَأَنَّهَا مَوْعِظَةٌ مُوَدَّعٍ. Ya Rasulullah, are you feeling ill? Are you going to pass away? It's like the advice you're giving is like you're going to leave us. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, look, the advice that I'm going to give you, I may not be leaving, but take this advice from me as though I am leaving. Take this advice from me as though I am leaving. They say the word muwadda'. In Arabic, even in Urdu, use wida'. Wida', when you're trying to give the person wida'i. You tell the person, go, farewell. So muwadda' comes from that same root letter, wadda'a, which means to bid someone farewell. Very similar is the hadith, salli salata muwadda'. Pray salah as though you're leaving this world, bidding the world farewell. Likewise, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave this advice, and the Sahaba thought, Ya Rasulullah, are you leaving us? Why so much emotion? And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, the advice that I have to give you is very important. That's why I put so much impact on it. What were the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? He said, to begin with, أُوصِيكُمْ بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ عَزَّ وَجَلَّ. I give you wasiyah of consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In the Arabic language, you have two types of advice. One is wasiyah and one is nasiha. Wasiyah is the advice that someone gives on their deathbed. Even in Arabic, English, even in our normal common speech, we talk about a wasiyat. Did you write your wasiyat before you passed away? Did the person write a wasiyat before he left this world? It's because it's the advice you give before you're leaving this world. And then you have nasiha. Nasiha is the advice that you give on a normal occasion. So, usikum, what I'm telling you is nothing ordinary, make sure you're aware of it. First and foremost, usikum bi taqwallah. that I give you advice of taqwa. That taqwa is a very important conversation. We know about it. So inshallah we'll go to the next part. وَالسَّمْعِ وَالطَّاعَةِ وَإِن تَأَمَّرَ عَلَيْكُمْ عَبْدٌ. That you listen and you obey even if on top of you ruling is a slave. This is very strategic advice that Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is giving the Sahaba. Particularly because the Sahaba were Arab, for them to give royalty, for them to give superiority to non-Arabs was very difficult. Was very difficult. Because why? They had this superiority simply because, we're from Quraysh. We have Lughatu Adnan, we speak Arabic. Quran was revealed to us. So how dare anyone tell me what to do? And there were many occasions when this happened. Very famous incident was when Usama radiallahu an, he was Hibbu Rasulullah, the most beloved of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but he was obviously the son of Zayd ibn Haritha. He was the son of a mawla, of a slave, and he was very young. And many Sahaba, when they found out that he was becoming the general, they said, this young person, we have this hesitation. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, no, you have to follow him. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu later said, no, it's the advice of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we're going to go with it. So, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling the Sahaba, look, I've worked with you for so many years and you have this iman, but don't forget, as-sam' wa ta'a, that in any circumstance of leadership, when there are no unethical behavior, yes, if there's something unethical, something wrong, let's say for instance, I'm working in my job and my boss is telling me to do something, but it's completely illegal, something haram, something unlawful. He tells me, for instance, that, you know what, there's someone over there, I want you to do X, Y, and Z, we're going to go and harm them. No, none of that. This is assuming in a normal circumstance. As-sam'u wa ta'a, that you listen and you obey, even if the person is an abd, even if the person is a slave. Again, I don't want this to be misunderstood. This is not saying that if something is haram and wrong, that you obey as well. No. When something is legitimate, you should never let the person's skin color, the person's ethnicity, the person's social standing be the reason why you're objecting. That he's talking to me, I'm educated. I have a college degree. I have a PhD. I'm earning 6 figures. This person's driving an Uber. How dare he tell me what to do? No. This is something that is a disease of the heart. That when I feel that my money, my education, my standing, my skin tone, my language somehow makes me superior than somebody else, then I have traces of jahiliyyah. I don't have traces of Islam in me. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, look, a time is going to come when people are going to, وَإِن تَأَمَّرَ عَلَيْكُمْ, you're going to have people on top of you, and you're going to look at that person and say, who does this person think he is? I'm Arab. I speak Arabic. I know the Quran. I'm educated. This person's a slave. No. If this person is the person on top of you, respect that person as long as he is following the Sharia. Okay? So that's the first part. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying this is very important advice. And for us as well, very strategic advice as well. Even as a family, subhanAllah, something I grew up with and even I saw my teachers, when you have a group of people going somewhere or doing something, right? Let's say for instance we have a project. We're all going to work together and we're going to go hiking, we're going to go camping, we're going to do something. It's very important to appoint an amir. Appoint someone who is in charge. Otherwise, they say you don't want a ship with too many captains, right? You don't want too many chefs in the kitchen. You need to appoint who is going to be in charge, and once we've appointed that person, I'm going to defer to that person. So all of our friends, 10 of us, we're going to go hiking. 10 of us, we're going to go swimming. We're going to do something together collectively. We need to appoint, you know what? Muhammad, you're going to be the amir. We're going to do shura together, but you are responsible for the decision making. And I should never think, this person's younger than me. This person speaks this language. This person's color is this. This person's... No. As-sam'u wa ta'a. Listen attentively and obey when somebody's put on top. Then Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, فَإِنَّهُ مَنْ يَعِشْ مِنْكُمْ فَسَيَرَى اِخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. SubhanAllah. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is telling this to Sahaba 1400 years ago that إِنَّهُ مَنْ يَعِشْ مِنْكُمْ, whoever among you is going to live. I'm going to leave this world shortly. And speaking to the young Sahaba, to Ibn Umar, to Ibn Abbas, that you're going to live, inshallah, after me you're going to live, you're going to notice اختلافا كثيرا. You're going to see disagreement, you're going to see fights. This is a very sensitive topic, and I'm not going to get into it too much, but it's important to understand, even the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, among themselves, they had disagreement. But there's a difference. The disagreement of the Sahaba was not nasty. The disagreement of the Sahaba was one of understanding. They couldn't see eye to eye on very important issues. Just to give one example, very famous, when Uthman radiallahu anhu was assassinated, what happened? They knew that some rebels instigated and they were responsible for the assassination of Uthman radiallahu anhu. The Sahaba were divided. Do we first catch the perpetrators, or do we regain stability? Ali radiallahu anhu is now appointed and there's this disagreement. Let's get our revenge. Another group is like, no, we can't do that. And the Sahaba disagreed. But no Sahabi said, that Sahabi is a fasiq, that Sahabi is a munafiq, that Sahabi is this. No name calling. Complete disagreement, but no name calling. And that is what we need to adopt in our lives. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is telling the Sahaba, you're going to see ikhtilaf. We're 1400 years down the line, we're definitely going to disagree. And what we should never allow is our disagreement to create hatred in our hearts. To create hatred in our hearts. You know, subhanAllah, there was an incident. Our teacher used to tell us a story. There was a particular sheikh. He was in a community, and mashallah, he was well established over there. And he used to work with this community, give advice, lead the salah. He was well established. And then another sheikh, he moved into the community, and the first sheikh, he got scared. He thought, you know what, I'm already working over here. This person, we disagree. Why is he coming over here? It's going to cause a problem. There's no room for somebody else to come. So, subhanallah, the first sheikh, the scholar, to give his message to the other scholar, he told his student, I want you to take this cup. I'll give you a cup. I'm going to fill it with water and give him this cup, and he'll understand what I'm trying to say. So he gives him the cup, and the scholar, he takes this cup and he puts a petal from a flower petal, he puts it on top and he gives it back. And the scholar, when he gets the cup back, he starts to smile and laugh. So the student asks, listen, I'm confused. I don't know what language you guys are speaking. I don't know what you guys are doing. And he says, let me explain to you, subhanallah. He says, when he came, I had this fear that there's no room for other work. How dare he come and start something else? So I sent him this cup and I filled it almost to the top to let him know there's no space for more water. Get the message. The cup is full, the community is full, we don't need anybody else. So when the other scholar got it, he put a flower petal over there because there's enough space just for that, saying that, listen, I'm contributing to the society, I'm not going to ruin the society. And the scholar said, I immediately understood that, subhanAllah, he's coming here not with animosity, but so we can work together. There's so many times in many things that we're doing, don't immediately get the understanding of competition. I'm doing something, even in our worldly life, I'm doing something, my first reaction should be, how can we work together, not how can we be competitive. And this happens all the time, even in the workspace, right? In corporate America, it always happens. It's like a cutthroat business over there. I need to make sure I'm on top of my game. So Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, you're going to see ikhtilaf. So I give you advice. What is the advice? فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةِ خُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ. When you see this ikhtilaf, remember, hold on to my sunnah and hold on to the sunnah of the khulafa. Hold on to the sunnah of the khulafa. This statement of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam has to be understood. Alaykum bi sunnati. Hold firmly onto my sunnah. We should be aware, in Islam, there's a difference between sunnah and hadith. There's a difference between sunnah and hadith. Not every hadith is a sunnah. If I just open up a hadith collection, in English, I read a translation, I say, oh, mashallah, I read a hadith, I'm going to practice on it. You're not practicing on this hadith. Sunnah is that hadith, because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says right after that, وَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ الْمَهْدِيِّينَ. My sunnah but also the sunnah of the khulafa, meaning what I have done, you have to see whether the Sahaba are practicing on it as well. If somebody just picks up a hadith book and starts practicing on it, they're not practicing on the sunnah. You have to see, how have the Sahaba understood this hadith? That is what is the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, "Alaykum bin nawajid." My sunnah and the sunnah of the Sahaba, hold firmly onto it with your nawajid, your wisdom teeth. You know, when you want to bite something, if you bite it from the front teeth, you can break your teeth. But when it's something hard, you grab onto it with your molars. Your molars, you grab onto it to make sure you get a firm grip. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, hold on to it. This part of Sunnatul Khulafa al-Rashidin al-Mahdin is very important. We're living in a time where many people, they curse the Sahaba. They say negative and awful things about the Sahaba. It's part of the Sunnah that you respect them. Yes, we don't venerate them to the status of the Anbiya, but nor do we treat them like ordinary people, because these were the people who sacrificed their blood, sweat, and tears for you and I to have Iman. So at the bare minimum, we need to show them that respect. So Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, show them the respect. وَإِيَّاكُمْ وَمُحْدَثَاتِ الْأُمُورِ. And Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, avoid any form of bid'ah, because bid'ah is something that eventually leads to misguidance, and misguidance eventually leads you to Jahannam. This is a very powerful hadith. And I just want to end with 2 points for us to take back. The first part that I want to mention is how Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he gave us advice, our advice from Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is useful not only in our religious life, but even in our worldly life as well. What was the first piece of advice? That when there is someone in authority or leadership, we need to have obedience and, listen in obedience. Perfect advice for the family structure. In a family, it can't always just be whatever anyone says, it goes. No, there has to be appointed that this person, the father, the mother in this matter is responsible. It doesn't have to be one person responsible for everything. It can be in different areas. Okay, we're going to have a separate area of the child's education. You know what? My wife, she has much more better research than I do in this. She's going to be in charge of this, and I'm going to defer it to her. In financial matters, I have better acumen. I'm going to be in charge. We need to have one person who's in charge and make mashwara with one another. Not a dictatorship, but ultimately one person's opinion goes with the mashwara of one another. Otherwise, you can't have stability. Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam is saying, whenever someone is in charge, listen and obey. Otherwise, there's going to be chaos. There's going to be misunderstanding. And this needs to be spoken of before, even though it's an uncomfortable conversation. Anyways, the first thing that we learn is Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam's advice applies throughout everything that I'm doing. The second piece of advice Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam gives us is that ikhtilaf, differences of opinion, is normal. I'm going to disagree, that's fine. But the ulama explain, you have ikhtilaf, that's one thing, and the other thing is khilaf. Ikhtilaf and khilaf. Ikhtilaf is disagreement that is kind, cordial, understanding. Khilaf is disagreement that is nasty, that is disgusting, that involves swearing, cursing, profanity. And ikhtilaf is a misunderstanding that's resolved in a proper way. So, this happens very common. If I'm praying salah and somebody's praying salah differently, that's fine. There is ikhtilaf. Ulama have come to different conclusions. I have to respect it. I'm not going to go to the person and say, how dare you do this, how dare you do that. Yes, there will be ikhtilaf. But if somebody is doing something wrong, and this is very common, person is praying salah, their awrah is showing. I need to learn to accept that I have done something wrong. If I'm coming to the masjid and my whole behind is showing when I go into sajda, and somebody comes to me and says, listen brother, very kindly says to me, brother, you know what, when you're praying salah, we should try our best to cover. If I react and say, who do you think you are? How dare you? Why are you looking around in salah? No. If the person is being kind about it, then definitely I should accept that advice. And if I'm the one trying to give the advice, subhanallah, this is very touchy. I don't have the right to be offensive when somebody does something wrong. I have to be very nice about it. If I ever come to somebody and say, hey, why are you speaking so loudly? And the person responds back to me by saying, don't talk to me like that. Who's at fault? I'm at fault. Yes, he's talking loudly. Yes, he's at fault for doing the action wrong. But I have done something wrong by approaching that person. You know, subhanAllah, I'm going to end on this. I don't want to take too long. There was a person who was drunk. A person who was drunk. And one of the neighboring, not police, but patrol, smelled something. So he jumped over the fence. He grabbed that person, took him out of his house and brought him to the Khalifa. Said, look, this person is drunk. The Khalifa, he told this patrolman that this person, he did one thing wrong, you did three things wrong. Patrolman's like, what are you talking about? It's my duty. What did I do wrong? He said, he's drinking, it's wrong, but he did it in his backyard where nobody is seeing. It's between him and Allah. You did three wrong things. Number one, you were being too nosy. How did you know that he was drunk in his backyard? Meaning, like, it wasn't a backyard like we have today where you can see everything. No, it's like a shed. He's inside of his own closed area. How did you know? Only way you know was you were snooping around. Number two, you dragged the person over here, you humiliated him. Number three, you didn't even have proper evidence. Who knows why this person is drunk, and you're immediately reporting the person. You did three things wrong. We can talk about this incident later, but the point that I want to mention is sometimes when we want to correct something, we end up doing more wrong than we're trying to correct. Somebody does something wrong. For instance, it's wrong. Let's say, for instance, a person comes to the masjid, their awrah is showing. There's no need for me to say, hey, what are you doing? Get out of the masjid. No. I'll go to the brother. I'll even bring a hadiyah. Subhanallah. This is one of the best ways to get to somebody's heart. Bringing a small gift and saying to the brother, mashallah, I saw you come to the masjid. I was so happy to see that you're coming to the masjid at a time when nobody is coming to the masjid, nobody's praying. You know what? Here's a small hadiyah. I heard from my teachers that it's very important to cover up. It's a very important thing. And just end it like that. When we take this approach, then subhanallah, people's love is going to increase. In any case, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala inspire us to be those people who have hikmah and wisdom. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to appreciate our differences as brothers and sisters. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to heed the advice in this beautiful hadith. Jazakumullahu khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Naam? Naam, okay. Naam. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted, He would make every individual onto one particular path. So if He wanted, every single person would be a Muslim. If He wanted, every single person would agree on politics. But no, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala kept ikhtilaf in this world so that there can be a balance. One person is high on this, one person's low on this. Another person, he's low on this, another person's high on that. So Allah, and this is in particular reference to the fact that Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam was doing so much da'wah. And he was doing da'wah and calling people to Islam, and people weren't accepting. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, look, if I wanted, I could have forcefully made everybody Muslim. But no. Hidayah is something that they have to willingly accept. Jazakumullah khairan.